Well, I guess it's that time of the year again. We're just over 100 days, 30% of the year, by the way, till the next IndyCar race, the season opener in St. Pete. And around this time of year, November, December, it always seems like we get stuff like this. And once again, we have the negativity beginning to flow because no one has anything to talk about in IndyCar because it's been gone for what, 2, 3 months at this point? It's been a while. And Romain Grosjean, who may very well be on the outside looking in next year in IndyCar racing, has fired off in an article written by Marshall Pruitt over on Racer. Link will be in the description. And we've got to talk about it because he took a pretty direct shot at the marketing of the series and also the hybrid system, which, as we know, has been a bit of a stick for a lot of teams, drivers, fans, a lot of people not so happy with the hybrid system as it is currently implemented in IndyCar. So we'll be talking about all of that. I'm sure a lot of you are asking what my opinion is of the NASCAR race, and I will say this: I already gave it. I looked into my crystal ball and I saw what would happen, and I made a video on it 3 days before it happened. So go watch the video. I titled it "NASCAR's in Trouble." Completely believe it because I said in that video Joey Logano is definitely going to win the championship. He did, and all of the fan apathy that has happened after that is exactly as I kind of foresaw it. So check that video out if you want to hear my thoughts on NASCAR because they really haven't changed all that much. For the next 12 days, I'm actually flying out tomorrow. I'll be in Las Vegas. I will be working as a pit reporter for the Supernats, Scusa's Crown Jewel event over on Kart Chaser, so check that out. And then I'll be staying in town, actually, to attend my first Formula One race, the United States Grand Prix at Las Vegas, or the Vegas Grand Prix, whatever you want to call it. Finally got the opportunity to go over there at the moment just as a fan, not really planning on doing much content specifically about F1, although there's some auto racing history in Las Vegas that I think I might be doing a video on while I'm out there. So stay tuned for that. All right, let's take a look at the Racer article and what Romain Grosjean had to say. We'll talk about his silly season prospects as well as break down this quote, but let's read the quote first because it's a bit spicy. So Grosjean talking to Marshall about whether or not he would be in IndyCar next year, he said, "It's all budget. Right now, I've got nothing lined up. It is what it is. I think last year was probably one of my best seasons, and I may end up not being on the grid next year just because the marketing has been horrendous for IndyCar. The hybrid has brought the cost to a level that's unbearable for the teams, and that's the way that it is." Woof. It's been a while since a driver has come out that strongly about IndyCar, and I think, let's be charitable here. This could be some sour grapes for sure from Grosjean because he might want to be back in IndyCar next year, and the opportunity might not be there for him. There's a lot of context to be had, though, with Juncos Hollinger and why Romain Grosjean might not be back. We'll talk about that in just a second. But I don't think this is just sour grapes. I think because he might be, and I believe it is, on his way out in IndyCar, he no longer has a reason to hold back. I think what Romain Grosjean said here is a sentiment that's shared by, I would say, a majority of the paddock. It seems to me, conversations that I have about IndyCar, especially in the offseason, because it is the offseason, right? It's the longest offseason in professional sports. And, since the silly season now starts a month before the Indy 500, a lot of the storylines that we could be following, could be interested in, could keep the conversation going, happen in the season anyway. So what do we have to talk about the rest of the year? Well, most of the time it's the fact that nothing's happening, no one's making any money, and everybody's upset. And this is very much in line with, the typical conversations that go on in this industry. Nothing that Romain Grosjean said there is shocking, surprising to me in the least. I will say this. I think I'm going to start out with a little bit of honey, though, before we get into the bees. Because I think that sometimes when I hear the complaints about marketing in IndyCar, I think it's a little bit misguided. And let me explain why. I think you could have let's give the absolute benefit of the doubt here. Let's say IndyCar literally has all of the right people in place right now. They have the dream team. They have the perfect marketing, apparatus ready to go. The problem with IndyCar and the IndyCar marketing is not so much the people, not so much the strategy, not so much X, Y, or Z. It's the fact that they don't have the sport doesn't have the infrastructure to market. Where's the video game? Right? That's one of the first things I can say. Where's the video game? Where has the video game been? You talk about young people, you talk about marketing, you talk about all this stuff. Where has that been? Because the golden age of gaming took place post 2008. Like in terms of like mainstream, you have to be in this space. The IndyCar has never been in that space, right? There are not avenues to bring people in to market to in the first place. And then let's think about the product itself. What was I just complaining about? I was complaining about a 6-month off season. It's going to be longer next year with the new Fox deal. When your sport barely takes up half of the calendar year with actual content, and the content that IndyCar sells is the on-track product. That is the content. As an entertainment company, which they call themselves Penske Entertainment, they entertain people for half of the year. Well, how do you fill that gap if you don't test anymore? You don't have anything new to show off. You don't have teams or drivers or cars that are different each year testing in places that the media can get to easily and show what's going on. It's pretty telling, and nothing against the Thermal Club, but this is just how it is. One of the biggest off-season tests is happening at a country club in California. Inaccessible for the most part to the public, to the media. The teams are heading out there. They're bringing all their rookies out there, but not many people are going to see, hear, or talk about it. And that's just the reality of the situation. Speaking of not being seen or heard or talked about, the fact that the new car is, if you're optimistic, coming in 2027. If you're pessimistic, and boy, oh boy, have I heard a lot of pessimism, you're talking 2028, 2029 for a new chassis. And it would be evolutionary, not revolutionary, right? We're not talking about some major departure from what they're doing right now. The most major departure, which I keep hearing and disappoints me every time I hear it, would be that the engine would be semi-spec to mostly spec. How are you supposed to market that? Like, the mechanical aspect of auto racing is important. I don't care what anyone says. I don't care what any, person says. The mechanical aspect of it is important. Now, it has to be the correct mechanical aspect, and we'll talk about the second part of Romain Grosjean's quote here in a second. But the fact that the chassis that they are currently running, and I get that it's changed and they've changed the bodywork and things have developed. Yes, there has been a bit of a natural progression with the DW12. I don't want to pretend like it's the exact same, the bones are the same, but everything else is different. I understand that. But the fact that chassis has gone on or will have gone on longer than the entirety of the IndyCar split is absolutely asinine to me. Sometimes I get the feeling, and this is where my kind of confusion and frustration is. It sometimes feels like the very upper level management doesn't understand what a racing fan wants to see, what gets a racing fan excited. I think there's a lot of the attitude that they need to copy one thing or the other that's working from, say, Formula One, or something that's working from NASCAR, or something that's working from the NFL. But there's not really an understanding of how the fan base, or what the fan base wants, an understanding of what potentially race fans that you're not getting right now want, or maybe aren't getting in other series that you could potentially lean into and give and provide to the greater racing community. There's a lot of that's lost right now. So when we talk about marketing, when you have a dinosaur of a car, when you have a short season, when you have V6 engines, when you potentially are going to make those V6 engines spec in the future, these are not things that you could have the best marketer in the world and they wouldn't be able to sell that. You can sell the Indy 500 all day, by the way. When we talk about IndyCar, we're mostly talking about every month that's not made, the other 11 months of the year. I think I need to remind everybody that they tried to kill the Indy 500. The split was they have thrown everything, almost everything at the Indy 500 to get rid of that event, unintentionally, of course, but it still continues to be strong. But I think that's kind of in spite of the series and not because of the series, right? So it's tough, man. It's really tough. So I get the frustration on the marketing side, but you have to have something to market. You have to have something to talk about. And it has to be something that's not always negative, because we're always, what am I talking? This video is negative. We're talking all this negative stuff. The positivity very hard to find. And I get Grosjean's point, because yes, sponsorship is an incredible problem right now. Juncos is almost certainly going to bring at least one pay driver in, potentially one of those being announced this week. And that's the way of the world right now in IndyCar. Big teams are losing sponsors. Big teams can't bring in sponsors. There's one sponsor, and I don't think it's announced yet, so I'm not going to say specifics, but it's a sponsor that sponsors multiple teams. My understanding is they're out. Hy-Vee out. Hy-Vee's staying at Iowa, but they're out at Rahal. That's another one. Tough spot. Really tough spot. Grosjean talks about the hybrid. And so I just mentioned the mechanical aspect of the race car is important. But I think the hybrid was a mistake, for sure. And I will stand by that. I'll continue to stand by that. And I get that Honda wanted it. And I get that it's important for their marketing perspective to sell to the board members to keep the IndyCar program going, that there's a hybrid component. I understand that. I think it's way too late in the game to be doing specifically a hybrid. This should have been on the cars in like 2015 at the latest, in my opinion, to actually have the impact that you want it to have. Because right now, it's everything IndyCar is doing is just to maintain, right? Keep Chevy, keep Honda, keep Dallara, all of this stuff. There isn't a lot of growing that I see. Is a hybrid on a purebred V6 racing engine going to attract another manufacturer? Maybe. We don't hear a lot about that, though. There's nothing that I know that's in the pipeline. I know other people are more informed than I am, and certainly there could be a manufacturer that someday will return to IndyCar or come to IndyCar. But right now, I don't see, because to Grosjean's point, he's absolutely right. Huge cost to the teams. Cars are heavier. Cars are slower. The fans, after the first race with the hybrid, maybe the first two races, no one talked about the hybrid anymore, because everybody had the same hybrid. Everybody had the same hybrid power. And after looking at the data, everybody used the hybrid in the same way. So it didn't change anything. It made it all more expensive and slower. Like the hybrid wasn't the reason the oval racing was good at the end of the year. That was the technical team putting in a hell of a job, full credit to them, and Firestone being willing to experiment. Had nothing to do with the hybrid. So the positivity that we got out of the end of last year had nothing to do with that. And the unfortunate reality is that while the racing can be great, I wouldn't say that this season was an exceptional season for IndyCar. I thought the short oval racing was the best we've seen in forever, and I'm so excited to see those races next year. But this was definitely not an exceptional season, entertainment value-wise, from IndyCar racing. And even when you have a good race, it doesn't last. Like, you have a good race and you go, man, that was so satisfying, that was awesome. But then you have nothing to talk about the rest of the time, because how many more times can you say that was a good race? that was an exciting race. Boy, was that exciting. There needs to be a little bit more meat to the bone to continue that conversation. And to my point earlier, we just don't have that. And so if the fans aren't more excited and more willing to buy tickets and more willing to buy merch and more willing to support the manufacturers because the hybrid's on the race car, then to me, it shouldn't be on the race car because it hasn't really improved the sport any that I've seen. And I'm just telling it like it is. Again, I get that everybody's going to have a few months to cool off, and I'm probably pissing people off by saying it this way, but that's how I see it right now. And I'm sure, and this is the worst part about this, the fact that this offseason is so freaking long, we have nowhere to go but negative. We have nowhere to go but negative. And I hate that we do, because at the end of the day, I guarantee you Romain Grosjean cares about IndyCar. Like Marshall Pruitt wrote that article, absolutely cares about IndyCar. Juncos Hollinger Racing cares about IndyCar. Everybody cares, loves, wants this sport to succeed. No one says these things because they want to see it fail. No one is taking pleasure in any of this. But this is not going to be the last article that you're going to have somebody chirping. This entire offseason, you're going to hear more of this. I guarantee it. This is not the last time you're going to hear this. And part of it is that we just have been sitting on our asses for 2.5 months, doing nothing. I think Romain Grosjean will have a racing seat next year. My suspicion is it will be with Lamborghini. Lamborghini recently announced that they are leaving the World Endurance Championship. Most likely will focus on an IMSA program. They've already announced that they will be in the Michelin Endurance Cup. My understanding is that it's going to become a 2-car program. 1 car will be full-time. 1 car will be for the Michelin Endurance Cup. So 2 Lamborghinis at the majority of the IMSA races next year. And Romain Grosjean likely will be a pretty significant part of that program going forward. He was this year. Got to run at the 24 Hours of Le Mans in what appears to be the first the first and only run for Lamborghini and prototype at Le Mans, at least for the foreseeable future. But yeah, if you're curious about where Romain Grosjean is going, that's I suspect where he's going. We'll see what will happen, especially if the pay driver gets announced pretty soon for Juncos, who is the paid driver at Juncos. But it's tough, man. It's tough. It's a tough spot right now for IndyCar, and it just disappoints me as someone who's been a lifelong. And again, this all feels so familiar because I've had to say this for like the last 2 years around this time of year. It's so disappointing because, again, I think we all want to see it succeed. I think we all want to help. And there's a lot of work that needs to be done. I think that's my final statement. Shout out to Romain Grosjean for saying this because it got us talking. Looking forward to covering Supernats for Kart Chaser. Tune in if you can. It's live and free. And hopefully we'll have some fun at the Las Vegas Grand Prix. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.